Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Wednesday edition of the show, our third of the week, and there's a lot to get into as the Bucs have assembled their practice squad. A couple of new names on the practice squad now, a new player on the active roster as well. So the Bucs are moving and shaking, finding new players, adding the same players, and we also spoke to Jason Licht and some players in the locker room today. So a lot of good, fun information to get to on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow co-host from pewterreport.com. It is SR, Scott Reynolds. And Scott, it's very fluid with the Bucs. 1 second you have one roster, the next second it's completely new. So a lot to get into.
Yes, a lot to get into. This is going to be an action-packed show, and let's just start off with the names that we know that are on the Bucs practice squad right now, and we've got that list here. Let's pull it up, shall we? Michael Pratt, former Tulane quarterback, who, if you have followed Pewter Report's draft coverage in the offseason, you'll know that Michael Pratt was the Bucs' best bet, and he ended up getting drafted one spot ahead of Tampa Bay by Green Bay in the 7th round. That's right. The Bucs were actually going to pull the trigger and draft Michael Pratt in the 7th round. That didn't happen because the Packers beat the Bucs to the punch, but they ended up drafting Devin Cope. It worked out well because they ended up getting both players in the end. And then a lot of these names are familiar faces. DJ Williams, the running back, Sterling Shepard, the veteran wide receiver. No surprise that he's back. Cody Thompson, for all you Cody Thompson believers out there, he is back on the practice squad, as is Ryan Miller, who also had a very good preseason and training camp. Tight end Tanner Towla, offensive lineman Luke Haggard. I think Matt and I are pleasantly not surprised, but we're happy to see.
We're pleased. Haggard. We're pleased that he's on the list. Yeah,
for sure. Lorenz Metz, maybe not so much, but he doesn't count because he is a roster exemption, being German-born. He is the international player that's designated by Tampa Bay, so they have actually the ability to sign 17 players to their practice squad. They have 16 right now, including Metz. They have one open spot. A couple of defensive linemen. Matt and I are happy to see C.J. Brewer back. Mike Green is also back. Daniel Grisiak and Antonio Greer and Vi Jones, two players that Matt and I both were very fond of, certainly during the preseason games, and Greer really made a splash during the last preseason game against the Dolphins. And then both safeties, who I thought showed very well and both made an impact in the last two preseason games, Rashad Wisdom and Marcus Banks. And they did sign a punter, Seth Vernon, just in case Jake Camarda's hijinks continue, Matt. We need to see some consistency from Jake Camarda, and more importantly, Todd Bowles and Jason Licht need to see some more consistency from Jake Camarda, or they might pull the old switcheroo right there.
Yeah, kind of interesting, right? Like, we began this preseason with Chase McLaughlin kind of missing some kicks and having some questions about him for sure. And by the end of training camp, it's the punter that is bringing some questions. I'm not ready to, end the Camarda show just yet. I think it's important to remember, too, that Camarda does the kickoffs for the Buccaneers, which becomes a little more important now with all the new kickoff rules and things of that nature. And you want to be able to kick it in that certain box area so you can go and, work with better field position, whether you're in coverage or the return team. But yeah, I thought it was important to bring in another punter just so, Jake Camarda's aware and, understands what's going on. And you might as well take advantage of that extra spot with, as you mentioned, Lorenz Metz being the international exemption. It was funny watching the game on Friday night with the Bucs and the Dolphins in their last preseason game. Jason Licht went into the booth with Chris Myers and Rondé Barber and, asked a bunch of questions, but Metz got brought up and he's like, he's the safest guy on the roster right now because he's got the international exemption. So
that's right.
Good to see Luke Haggard. And why not give some competition to Jake Camarda because, he slipped up a little bit.
Yeah. You mentioned Luke Haggard. He's back on the practice squad. And the Buccaneers did part ways with Brandon Walton, who I know that move will come as a pleasant surprise to some of you all out there. The Buccaneers did that because they claimed off waivers Royce Newman, who is a Packers roster cut. He started, I want to say, 17 games. No, it's probably a little bit more than that. I think it's 21 games. But the majority of those came as a rookie. And then he kind of saw his starts decline from 16 and then 6 and then 2 this past year. Mostly a guard, played a little bit of tackle, but with Sua Opeta's injury, I think the Buccaneers wanted to have another guard in there that had some playing experience to maybe challenge Elijah Klein for that backup job. I know Robert Haynes is going to cross-train a little bit, but it's just if something were to happen to Ben Bredesen or Cody Mauch, you don't want to have to rely on Elijah Klein or Robert Hainsey. And then if you do, then your depth is really kind of cratered. So they view this as an upgrade over Brandon Walton, who, from what I've been told, may or may not return to the practice squad. They're kind of up in the air about it. They want to see if he wants to get another opportunity elsewhere. If that's the case, they're not going to necessarily cry about it. But if Walton does want to return, he does know the system. There is some familiarity there. They wouldn't mind necessarily bringing him back in the practice squad for an emergency type of situation. So Brandon Walton off the team, Royce Newman on the team in terms of the Bucs 53. That was one of the bigger moves. But when it comes to the practice squad, as we mentioned, Michael Pratt, there's a story that we broke here on Pewter Report. Very intriguing player. And we're going to have from Tulane, the Tulane SI website that covers the Green Wave. Maddie Hudak is going to be joining us at about 4:15 to kind of talk about this. She was the Tulane Green Wave sideline reporter for the last couple of years and had the best seat in the house to watch Michael Pratt do his thing at Tulane. Very intriguing quarterback. He earned my respect when he rolled into Manhattan and beat my Kansas State Wildcats. And it's kind of funny, Matt, we talked about Michael Pratt and we talked about Tulane yesterday a little bit on the show. It's almost like we kind of saw this coming. Did we have a little insight? Maybe we did, that the Buccaneers were interested in bringing on Michael Pratt. But he went toe-to-toe with Oklahoma in 2021 and just a really good quarterback. I want to say his record is 21-3 his last 2 seasons. So he really kind of brought Tulane to prominence and had them finish in the top 10 at number 9 after dueling with Caleb Williams and outgunning him in the fourth quarter to beat USC. So what does this mean for John Wolford? It means there's the door. He's not going to return. They're not going to be bringing Wolford back in the practice squad, at least as it stands right now. I think with Wolford, Matt, the injuries just kind of were a bit of a wake-up call. He's a very, very small quarterback. And I mean this in no disrespect. I'm literally just describing his stature, but he looks like a high school quarterback out there, right? I mean, he's a little bit smaller than Baker Mayfield, who's not the biggest guy to begin with. But the fact that you have to have some size to have some durability in this league, and this was the second preseason in a row he took a shot and was knocked out of the third preseason game due to injury. And so I think the injury concerns and his height and size, plus he didn't exactly light it up. This is a player that spent 3 years in Los Angeles playing with Liam Cohen in that Sean McVay system. And you would think he would come and just dazzle during this training camp, even more so than last year when he made a good first impression. That wasn't the case.
Yeah, I mean, he looked pretty good last year. This year, it wasn't necessarily the same. And I do wonder how much his injury in Jacksonville really, impacted the fact that the Bucs don't have him on the practice squad anymore. And it makes a lot of sense to have Michael Pratt on this team, considering, you don't want to look too far down the road, but this is the last year for Kyle Trask under contract with the Buccaneers. And, regardless of what happens with Kyle Trask, eventually the Bucs have to think about at least having a younger quarterback on the roster, unless you just want to keep trying to find a veteran like they did with Tom Brady and then with Baker Mayfield. But that's not the easiest of transitions. That's not the easiest of things to do. And we've seen the Bucs do this before with other quarterbacks, trying to sign them as an undrafted free agent, or like Josh Rosen when he bounced around the league and the Bucs had him for a little bit. So I like the idea of having someone that they were interested in from the get-go, as we talked about, and someone that we watched a fair amount of, especially at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Now the Bucs, yes, he's on the practice squad. He could sign to an active roster, but they have a guy that they can have develop, maybe eventually, be a backup next season or be a third string next season, and start now giving him the playbook, understanding what it's like to play in the NFL. I mean, just being around great players like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and things of that nature. So, yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And we have a super chat here from our guy, Leighton Carter. Good to hear from you, Leighton.
Thank you, Leighton.
Thanks for the $5 super chat. Thank you for being a YouTube channel member as well. As Leighton says, great job, guys. Like the practice squad. Expected the Brandon Walton release if they picked up someone. Yeah, that makes sense too. I mean, we kind of already talked about how Walton has struggled in certain areas for sure. And with Newman, first of all, I'm going to love going Newman. But with Newman on the team now, it just hedges the Bucs bets. I mean, let's remember that's why Sua Opeta was on this team to be that role, and hopefully Newman can kind of fall into place as well. And it was funny because today at practice, the Bucs only had 9 offensive linemen. So right after warmups, when the O-line started working with the quarterbacks, Cody Mauch actually went from like one side of the offensive line to the other offensive line because one side only had 4 guys. So they won't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, that's true. And it is kind of funny, this transition period where you don't have your practice squad signed and assembled yet. So they're not on the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't have enough guys to really make an entire offensive line like that. It's a little comical. We do have a couple comments here. This is from one of our Pewter Report, or one of our new members for Pewter Report channel membership. Pratt tore up the Sooners secondary back in the day. Great processor. Yes, I remember that game. That's really the first game where he popped on my radar in 2021. That was the season opener at Oklahoma, and nearly led them to a comeback. The final score was 40-35 with the Sooners beating the Tulane Green Wave, but that was a tremendous showing. Pratt had 3 touchdowns as well as a rushing touchdown, threw for just under 300 yards and no interceptions. Was a tremendous day for him. And then, like I said, next year he beat teams like Kansas State, which ended up winning the Big 12 championship, as well as the USC Trojans with Caleb Williams at quarterback. So certainly an accomplished college quarterback, and we'll see what he's able to do at the next level. He did have 1 touchdown and 1 interception as the 3rd string quarterback in Green Bay. And Callie Bucs just became a YouTube channel member. Thank you so much, Callie Bucs. That's awesome. You've been a longtime contributor here on the Pewter Report podcast, and we appreciate having you join us as a Pewter Report TV channel member too. So that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Callie Bucs. Love that this group is growing more and more day by day. So thank you, Callie Bucs, and thanks to all of our Pewter Report YouTube channel members that have been signing up on the daily.
Yeah, we want to bring in a special guest right now who's probably more familiar with Michael Pratt than anybody talking today or listening on this Pewter Report podcast. And that is Maddie Hudak from SI Now, the Tulane Green Wave channel. So I wanted to let you guys know that she also, in addition to covering the Tulane Green Wave, she also was a sideline reporter for the Tulane Green Wave. So how you doing, Maddie?
I'm doing well. It's exciting to talk about Michael Pratt's new home after watching him for 3 seasons on the sideline.
What's the biggest thing about Pratt that you could tell the Buccaneer fans and the Pewter Report audience? To me, he was just a winner. He just kind of willed the team to win. He was a gamer. Wasn't always the prettiest, most prolific quarterback, but he just found a way to get the job done time in and time out.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. And as I came in, I heard you guys talking about that Oklahoma game where I was actually evacuated for Hurricane Ida in Florida. So I got to kind of fan out and watch the game on TV for kind of the last time after becoming sideline reporter. And I'd really never seen a single game display of toughness like that in my life. And just watching the way that he helped lead this team from 2-10 to 12-2 and going to that Cotton Bowl, it wasn't the best outing for him necessarily, but when it came down to it at the end on that final drive, what he had to really work with, they had 1 minute left. There was no timeouts. They went into that game missing both starting tight ends, one being a pass catcher, one being a really key run blocker. And then having Deuce Watts, who was his top wide receiver, get knocked out cold the drive prior to that. He has to go down there, lead a touchdown. He gets sacked twice. He has a 4th and I believe 7 or 8 and a 4th and 16. It was truly unbelievable watching him just refuse to give up and let this team go down. And that's not to not say that the rest of the team stepped up, but that was really a time where I could really feel what people were talking about, having one of those great quarterbacks. I refer to him as one of those and guys and not a but, where he has all of the traits, all the things you want in a quarterback, and he's a great leader, and he's a great guy, really great character.
Yeah, Maddie, I was curious. We've seen a couple of different personalities at quarterback for the Bucs throughout the years. I mean, Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield. What type of guy are the Bucs getting with Michael Pratt? Is he more relaxed? Is he very kind of laser focused? What's kind of his attitude?
He's is genuinely a relaxed guy, but just to know kind of the adversity that he went through in his life off the field and was still able to lead his team on the field, not to mention the hurricane evacuation for 20 something days and having his team go through a 2-10 season and him deciding to stay around in addition to everyone else on that team. I think I see a lot of Michael Pratt's journey almost in Baker Mayfield, where yes, he was a former number 1 overall pick, but he kind of got pushed out for Deshaun Watson. He gets thrown to the Carolina Panthers, where he's in a quarterback competition with Sam Darnold and PJ Walker. And then he ends up on the Buccaneers. My dad grew up in Cleveland, so he followed along for them for a while. We went and watched the Saints play the Bucs last year and really kind of saw what Baker Mayfield could do, but he certainly has a chip on his shoulder. And I think that that's kind of what you're getting at this point in Michael Pratt, where I think he probably should have gone a little higher than he did. And then just kind of the attention that gets paid to 7th round guys and the truncated time they have to really prove themselves. You're definitely getting a guy who's going to really want to prove everyone wrong.
The interesting thing about Pratt is some fun facts. He's from Florida originally, so he's coming back to his home state. He'll probably appreciate that more in October, November, and December rather than being up in Green Bay. So it's probably a blessing in disguise for him to be cut by the Packers and come to a situation where Kyle Trask, the backup quarterback right now, is in a contract year, and his future is uncertain. So I think it opens a door for Pratt if he performs well and learns this Liam Cohen system, which I feel he's going to be a good fit for. But he had 4 different offensive coordinators at Tulane and no quarterbacks coach. I remember him telling me that at the Senior Bowl when I interviewed him. So this guy really is, I think, just kind of getting started in terms of his development. He certainly was well accomplished at Tulane, but I think from a mechanic standpoint and a quarterback refinement standpoint, maybe the best is yet to come for him.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how little time Michael Pratt has perhaps played football, where he was homeschooled until 9th grade, didn't play football until high school, and then becomes a starting quarterback out of nowhere. He actually transferred to another high school his senior year to beat out an incumbent starter because he wanted to play a better level of competition. So that just kind of speaks to, who he is. I kind of lost my train of thought on what your guys' question was in the first place.
Just basically how he had, no quarterback coach there really outside of the offensive coordinator, but not a position coach per se. And then have 4 different offensive systems essentially to learn with those different quarterback or different offensive coordinators.
Yeah, I remember where I was going with that. He also had a different offensive coordinator every year of high school. So he's quite literally never had 2 years of consistency in his life. And I agree where I think there's something to be said, about being in your element, being home somewhere where you're relaxed and it's familiar to you. Just speaking as someone that moved to the East, didn't really fit in there and kind of came back to where I am. I think it just allows you to be yourself a little bit more. When we played FAU last year in Boca Raton, Deerfield Beach, that's Michael Pratt's hometown, he became our all-time passing leader, and he just performed, with a little different pep in his step. But I agree where this kind of works out really well for him, where, again, I think you're all kind of racing towards the preseason, and the Packers had a weird situation where their quarterback room had 1 collective year of starting experience, and 3 or 4 years together in the NFL, with Sean Clifford being a second-year player and Michael Pratt being a fresh rookie. So having them kind of battle it out to potentially be a long-term guy if Jordan Love goes down, as we saw happen all the time last season, that might have been something I paid attention to a little bit sooner on. But I think now Mike has a chance to learn the playbook. He's not really, in that same kind of stressor time frame, but I think he does have an ability now, like you said, in that contract year. There's a little less anxiety and stress now if you're on that squad. And I really see him making a lot of strides this year.
One interesting fun fact about Tulane quarterbacks and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay's never won a Super Bowl without a Tulane quarterback on their roster. Probably the biggest pipeline for the quarterback position from Tulane to the NFL goes through Tampa Bay. Of course, Sean King, a 1999 second-round pick, started some games for the Buccaneers. You'll remember that 1999 NFC Championship game where his pass was actually caught by Bert Emanuel. They didn't rule it a catch, but he was a backup quarterback to Brad Johnson and Rob Johnson on that Super Bowl team back in 2002. And then, of course, Ryan Griffin, who helped Tom Brady famously in his drunken stupor at the Super Bowl parade, the boat parade here in Tampa. But Griff is actually the longest tenured Buccaneer quarterback from 2015 to 2022. So Michael Pratt in good Green Wave company here in Tampa.
Yeah, I remember when he went. I was actually at Tulane when he went over to the Bucs, and it's crazy that was pretty much the entirety of his career. He's a coach now with the Bears, I think. It is a very interesting pipeline, especially I think we're kind of getting past the perhaps biases and perceptions of G5 programs. We'll see how everything goes this year, but I think we're still getting there a little bit. You look at a Desmond Ridder who also got released by the Falcons, and Cincinnati was ranked second that year. And so they just got a totally different level of attention paid to them. I just think back to the Senior Bowl 2 years ago with Tajay Spears and Dorian Williams, both are which now credibly starting in the NFL. And I'd never seen anything like Tajay mania in my life, but it was like everyone had just kind of turned on their TVs and seen this guy out of Tulane. Yeah, I've seen him up close. I saw him there. It was as incredible and as advertised in person. And I think Tulane is starting to break through a little bit more and have that kind of perception and presence in the NFL. And I think Michael Pratt and his trajectory in Tampa Bay will kind of do a lot for that.
That's awesome.
I'm so mad at the Tennessee Titans for signing Tony Pollard because I had Spears on my fantasy team. I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep him. He's going to be the full-time guy. And then they signed Tony Pollard.
Spears is legit. He's a good player.
Hear me out on that one. Everything that came out about, whether or not he has an ACL, which to me, that discourse, we're talking about running backs. You want them to play now. They're not development pieces, and teams throw them out the door after their first contract. So if you get 2 or 3 really good years out of him, it's kind of what you're trying to do there. But he's a smaller guy. He's a little bit like that Alvin Kamara type where his vision and downfield, just patience and way to have that really good spatial awareness. It doesn't lend itself to all those hits up the middle. And I think Christian McCaffrey too, back in Carolina, where they ran him into the ground essentially. And when he went over to somewhere where he wasn't the every down back in that way. So for Tajay's longevity, I really liked that move. And I think that he's still going to find his way in the end zone, considering that, he played pretty considerably next to Derrick Henry last year.
That's true. That's a very good point. Well, Maddie, thank you so much for your insight about Michael Pratt and Tulane. We appreciate it. And you're the go-to gal when it comes to anything Tulane sports.
Awesome. Yeah. I look forward to seeing him grow again back where he grew up. You guys got a good one.
Appreciate it. Thank you so
Maddie.
much.
Thanks.
I'll tell you what, too. Tulane's got the best uniforms, man. They really do. That baby blue.
Yeah, without a doubt. And there's tough competition in college football.
I know.
Like a lot of teams bring
those are pretty sharp, I'm telling you.
Tulane is certainly in the mix.
Yeah, even the black alternate is cool, too, because they've got the light blue trim, and, of course, the little green wave on the helmet is pretty cool. Good stuff. So, yeah, we'll see. This could all be just a discussion for a day if he doesn't really pan out. Like you mentioned, Matt, this team brought in Drew Rosen years ago, former first-round pick, and he didn't really pan out as well on the practice squad. So we'll see. But I like this guy. There's just something about him. And I remember talking to him at length at both the Senior Bowl and the Combine, and I knew the Buccaneers were in on this guy. They really liked him. And I was surprised, too, that he fell to the 7th round. But sometimes that's just how it happens. And there's something about him. He is going to kind of be behind the 8 ball coming in because he is going to basically be the practice quarterback. He is going to be, he's going to do his best Jaden Daniels impersonation. But Matthew Stafford and all of, or not Matthew Stafford.
Good luck trying to.
I'm having flashbacks to the old Lions teams. Jared Goff, exactly, et cetera, as the Buccaneers season rolls on. Yeah.
He'd probably be best at Derek Carr being so close to New Orleans.
Yeah, for sure. So some good insight there, and we'll see how he progresses. Another super chat here from Redfish. Thank you so much, Redfish.
Yeah, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. As Redfish says, I know it's practice squad, but if cornerback Marcus Banks has a stinger, how bad is it? I just remember it stayed with Lynch for years and is why we let him go.
I don't think it's too bad. Lynch's was really bad because it was like in the upper neck area.
Yeah,
and,
right. It was a neck injury, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like we saw with Peyton Manning too. There's obviously a
Correct.
lot of risk when it comes to
Sure.
the neck injury. Of course, the Broncos have no issues with it because they got
That's
John
right.
Lynch and then they got Peyton Manning. So
Yeah.
the Broncos must have a neck specialist.
Exactly. And at the same time, too, Lynch was, I think, around 30 years of age. He's not a young, spry guy like Marcus Banks is, where he doesn't have all of those accumulated hits of years and years and years in the NFL to have to kind of consider and deal with. I think he'll be okay. I've not heard anything to suggest otherwise. But the Buccaneers, the good news for them, they are getting healthier as the season opening weekend, which is next weekend, kicks off. It's not this weekend. It is for college football, essentially, but it's not this weekend for the NFL. It's next weekend. But that's the subject of tomorrow's show. Bucs getting healthy for week one, and we'll talk about the status update for every Buccaneer that is coming off of a preseason or training camp injury, and let you know what the progress is. Today was the last day of practice for the week. The Buccaneers have the next couple of days off, and that's every team. That's not just Tampa Bay taking a little vacation time here before the start of the regular season. This is kind of mandated by the league. There is no NFL football this weekend, so it's a little bit of a pre-bye week for the teams.
Yeah, because
to get rested and ready for the start of the season.
Yeah, because I remember someone, I believe on yesterday's show, we didn't get to the comment because we have so many great fans and there's always comments rolling in, but it was about like, why are the Bucs having so many days off? It's kind of like, look at it, and it's a little bit different because they already had gone through a whole season, but like the Super Bowl, the two teams that play in the Super Bowl have a week off, or there's no game the weekend before the Super Bowl, and it's a way for everybody to rest up. And you kind of see it in training camp. Some guys get nicked up, and they sit out a day or a couple of days or whatever it may be. So it's that type of sense too. You want everyone to be as healthy as you possibly can going into the season. So that's why they're all off. We got another super chat. Thank you to Hezo813 with the $5 super chat. You've also been fantastic with a lot of questions on our special Friday Live Insider for our Platinum and Premier members. But anyway, Hezo says, SR, any inside scoop on Lewis Cine interest? But Lewis Cine, I believe, signed with the New York Football Jets.
He did. And the Buccaneers did not have any interest. I kind of followed up on that after we talked about that at the end of yesterday's show. And I believe I tweeted that out this morning on our X account, or posted it. I still say tweet, but it's a
same
post.
Thing.
Yeah, same thing. But yeah, and you know what? Maybe they dodged a bullet, right? For all of you that aren't really big on Logan Hall, not biggest Logan Hall fans out there, he's a better player than Lewis Cine than it ended up being. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you're good to great in college and you don't translate those skills necessarily well at the NFL level. And I think that's the case with Lewis Cine, who is on the practice squad, right? With the Jets, he wasn't even on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's a fall from grace going from a first-round pick to the practice squad, and not even 4 years.
And getting cut, before like your contract even runs out. So like, Vikings didn't even want to really take even more of a chance on him, which is kind of crazy. But one thing I will always take a chance on is having a Celsius energy drink, which is the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. More flavors are about for Celsius energy drinks. Check out some of their newest flavors, the sparkling watermelon lemonade and the sparkling kiwi strawberry. There are so many awesome flavors of Celsius. There is no sugar in them. It's a great way to start your day. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, you can head on over to the Celsius store locator on their website. You can punch in your address and it'll tell you the closest geographical location where you could pick one up. Might be a Walmart, a Target, a Piggly Wiggly, a health and fitness store, a 7-Eleven, or it could just be your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more, you can buy it in bulk over on Amazon. Just click on the subscribe and save, and you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com.
I told you guys I got a Celsius delivery yesterday, and I wasn't kidding. This is the new cherry cola, which I'm going to try in just a second here, along with the brand new watermelon lemonade. My wife and I enjoyed this one this morning. She liked it more than I did, but it's certainly good. I think it's better than the watermelon by itself, but this is a really good one. So let's try the sparkling cherry cola, and I bet you it's going to taste just like cherry cola, because you know how the folks at Celsius are. They don't get around when it comes to flavors.
Yeah, I like this. This is a live taste test of a Celsius energy drink.
Wow. I mean, come on. This is cherry cola right here. You can name the brands, okay, and this is exactly what it tastes like. And there's no sugar in it, which is good. And it has the essential energy I need to get me through the rest of this podcast, man.
And it just tastes great. Like, honestly, I could have it with like really any drink I want.
That's good. That's good stuff. All right, carry on. This is good. I feel energized now. I'm ready to do the rest of the show.
There you go. Yeah, we could do an hour and a half of the show now.
All right, so let's get to some of the questions and comments here, because I saw some good ones rolling here. We're gonna talk about it a little bit tomorrow, but in terms of Yaya Diaby, everything I'm hearing is that he is on schedule. He wasn't practicing this week, but the expectation is that he will be able to do that next week. That he'll be able to practice. That's what the hope is. Still has a couple more days of rest and recovery and rehab, and the proof will be out there next week in practice.
Yeah, for sure. And I think kind of a big question now is, how does the rest of the outside linebacker room unfold? I mean, clearly the Bucs have a ton of faith in their outside linebacker room. They kept 6, including Yaya, but that means they didn't even want to put Marquise Watts or Jose Ramirez on the practice squad. They wanted to keep them, on the active roster. Now, it's big that Marquise Watts plays special teams. That's very important for his own purpose, for the Bucs purposes. But it just shows how important the versatility of a lot of players. I mean, I think it was big when you talked about Tavier Thomas the other day, about he's playing 3 different positions out there. So that probably made a big difference between him and a guy like Keenan Isaac, who's now not even in the Bucs organization anymore, because Keenan Isaac is with the Carolina Panthers. It was probably bound to happen that someone on the Bucs was going to go to Carolina based off of waivers and the familiarity of Dave Canales. But Keenan Isaac, the first Buck to be plucked over to Carolina.
Yep. Jeff Moore says, please show the graphic of the practice squad again. My pleasure. Here it is. For those of you just joining the program, they have 16 out of the 17 practice squad members signed right now. And that extra spot may or may not go to Brandon Walton. They're going to let Brandon Walton decide what he wants to do. He's been with the organization a couple of years as a backup offensive lineman. See if he has an opportunity elsewhere. So they're not necessarily beholden on him coming back, but they wouldn't rule it out either. But the practice squad is as follows for those on our audio podcast that aren't watching this. Quarterback Michael Pratt, running back DJ Williams, wide receiver Sterling Shepard, wide receiver Cody Thompson, wide receiver Ryan Miller, tight end Tanner Talla, offensive lineman Luke Haggard, offensive lineman Lorenz Metz, who is German-born, so he is the international player that each team has the ability to sign one international player to their practice squad, and that player is exempt. So that means if you have an international player, you can actually have 17 players on your practice squad, and so the Buccaneers will have 17 once they sign one more. The other players on defense, 2 defensive tackles, CJ Brewer, good to see him back. Mike Green, outside linebacker Daniel Grisiak, inside linebackers Antonio Greer and Vi Jones, and then the 2 safeties Rashad Wisdom and Marcus Banks, along with punter Seth Vernon. So that right now is the practice squad, 16 out of a possible 17 that they will have the opportunity to sign. They have one more open spot, and they're taking a look to see who's around.
Now, let me ask you this, Scott. Let's just say Brandon Walton's like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to try my luck with another team. I'm not going to ask for a specific player because there's 31 teams out there, and it'd be impossible to look at like every single player. And that's why Jason Licht gets paid a lot of money and the rest of the, the front office. But if Brandon Walton's not back and there's still one more practice squad spot, what position would you like to see the Bucs address? Is it outside? Is it offensive lineman again? Just a different offensive lineman besides Brandon Walton? You want to see a cornerback in the mix because they got a couple of safeties back there? What are your thoughts on that?
I would probably say another cornerback. I think it's good to have another cornerback in the hopper to maybe be better than Keenan Isaac, who, as you said, went to Carolina. I think that's important. Bryce Hall signed a 1-year deal. Jamel Dean, he's not in a contract year, but he's in kind of a make or break year, the same way that Carlton Davis was. Carlton Davis couldn't stay healthy, couldn't pick off passes. Yeah. We'll see if Jamel Dean can do that, if he can pick off passes and stay healthy this year. If that's the case, the Bucs would love to have him around. But there's a little bit of a drop-off there. I think as it stands right now, Josh Hayes is more Ryan Smith in terms of being a special team standout, a gunner, than he is a cornerback that you want to see in the game playing defense. Maybe he develops into something more, but I was not terribly impressed with him. And, of course, no bias just because he's a Kansas State Wildcat. Great special teamer, but not that good on defense, at least from what we've seen so far. But Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers liked him better than Keenan Isaac because of the special teams factor. And Tyreek Thunderbrook, too. He's a player that I think is an interesting developmental corner. He can play inside and outside. So they do have him in the mix as well. And maybe he develops as a player that can leapfrog Josh Hayes and maybe be that fourth cornerback once he learns Todd Bowles' system. It was a little disappointing to see him miss the last 2 preseason games, of course, with that foot injury. That kind of held him back. But I think that he's pretty talented.
Yeah, for those in the comments asking about Tyreek Thunderbrook, he is on the 53-man active roster. So, yeah, he actually spoke with us today. Even though he did not participate, he was running individually. So he is getting closer to a return. And the coaching staff is super, super high on Tyreek Thunderbrook. As far as, Todd Bowles yesterday, he was asked about how much injuries kind of factor into coming up with this 53-man roster because, it hurts someone like Sterling Shepard, who missed a majority of training camp. But Sterling Shepard is older. He's been in the league for quite a while. He's in his 30s now. Like, the Bucs pretty much know what's going on with Sterling Shepard, where Tyreek Thunderbrook, an undrafted free agent, Bowles was saying from the beginning, like, he stood out in the spring. He stood out like in early practices that were going on. So, they're kind of more intrigued. Like, they knew what they had with him for a little bit as far as like a young player that can develop that. Like, from the get-go, they wanted this guy on the team, and they were willing to take a risk of, not seeing him play in the games, but hopefully continue to develop in practice on the side. And we got a super chat from MM Dre. Thanks for the $5 super chat, who says, kind of stings that Ramon Jefferson ain't make the cut. Truly wanted him to succeed. Yeah, the Bucs only decided to go with 3 running backs. So, with DJ Williams and Jefferson, I don't know between the two of them if one like totally really stood out more than the other. But yeah, the Bucs didn't decide. I was actually a little surprised. I could have seen both running backs get on the practice squad, just kind of given that Chase Edmonds is going to be out for the year now. But that's not how the Bucs saw it.
I think that when you look at both of these running backs, DJ Williams and Ramon Jefferson, Williams is a bigger back. And the beauty of plays in the preseason for Antonio Greer with that scoop and score that was called back because the arm of Mike White was going forward, and that was actually an incomplete pass against the Dolphins on 4th down. It wasn't a sack fumble for Ernest Brown, but guess what? It showed that Ernest Brown can get to the quarterback and kind of force a fumble. He can pressure like that. And it showed the athleticism on that return of Antonio Greer on that play, even though it didn't count. Same thing in Jacksonville, Matt. We saw DJ Williams rip off that run that was called back for holding, but that was I think a 30-yard touchdown run that showed some speed and some burst and some wiggle at the line of scrimmage. So those are the plays that, even though they're in the preseason and they didn't count, they're called back due to penalties or incomplete passes or whatever, they still show up on tape. You're still able to see what these guys can do. And Williams being a bigger back, he has something different. And I think that's what you look for, is you look for people with different skill sets. That's why instead of Cody Thompson making the team, you had a player like Cameron Johnson making the team rather than Cody Thompson, because he has that quickness, that suddenness, that kind of electric agility that really no other receiver on this roster has. Whereas Thompson was more of like a Jalen McMillan type, more of a Chris Godwin type. Yeah. And 6'2", 205, kind of similar size to those guys. So you look for players that have that standout quality. What's different that you can add to the room? And I think that's why DJ Williams got the call for the practice squad over Ramon Jefferson. And keep in mind, too, Jefferson also had the benefit of playing with Liam Cohen. So Liam Cohen has had a chance to see Jefferson at Kentucky for a whole year, and then also here in Tampa for the preseason and training camp. So he got an extended look for Liam Cohen, and as it stands right now, at least the Buccaneers said no thanks.
I think it's good to have like a duplicate, but you don't need like several duplicates. For example, like Jalen McMillan is essentially the duplicate for, Mike or Chris if something happens to them. Trey Palmer is kind of his own thing with the speed and taking the top off the defense. But yeah, Cameron Johnson is really his own thing. And I think you can apply that to the running back room as well. I do like this comment from Hezo813, a YouTube channel member, who says, can't get that image of Jamel Dean dropping that easy pick six. I don't know if it would have been a pick six, but it was a pick in the end zone, pick against Detroit in the playoffs out of my head. Who knows how that game could have went had he made that play. And right on cue, well done, Scott, with the Jamel Dean dropped interception.
It's right there. It's right there.
It's
Jamel, catch the ball. It's right there. It's in your hands.
It was a
what are you
slowly
doing?
Thrown. It was way more of a touch pass by Jared Goff than it was like a laser, especially when you get closer to the goal line. You're not trying to like really fire it in. But I can tell you, like, I was watching Jamel Dean today, him and Levante David, who Levante has had some issues catching the football just from an interception standpoint. But they were doing these drills today, warming up, where they were sitting down, kind of like when the Bucs do the row the boat celebration. Like They were sitting down that way, and they were turned to one side, and they were chopping their arms. Sorry, I'm trying to talk to the mic while I do this, but they were chopping their arms. And cornerbacks coach Kevin Ross, he wasn't just throwing the football; he was like chucking it at them as they were like going on both sides. And Jamel Dean talked all offseason about putting in extra work to, one, stay healthy, exercising different muscles that maybe he hasn't totally done in the past. And then the other one, just hitting the jugs machine, doing everything he possibly can to keep holding on to the football. I can't say I'm confident that Jamel Dean is going to, improve in that area this season, but he is putting in the effort, which is really good to see.
Agreed.
I just hope Zion McCollum doesn't fall down those same pitfalls that have unfortunately trapped Jamel Dean a little bit.
According to Zion, he's going to get 6 picks this year. I think the Bucs
would
be fine with half of that, and just get 3 would be great. Jacob Pitt says that would have changed the whole game, and 28-3 says it would have at least taken points off the field for the Lions. Yes, I mean, when you're up there, this is the Lions were in full throat. The fans were crazy for that game, hosting the divisional playoffs against the Buccaneers. They had just come off of a playoff win, a long-awaited playoff win the week before. That place was at a fever pitch. Jamel Dean drops an interception that would have given the Buccaneers defense some momentum, taking the 3 points off the board. It wasn't a touchdown, right? It was just 3 points, but it still gave the Lions the lead, and they still got points out of that initial early drive. And if Tampa Bay had closed the door on that drive with an interception, that might have changed things. Who knows? Football is a game of momentum. I think maybe more so than any other sport. That's what makes it so great. You can have 1 sack, 1 touchdown, 1 field goal, 1 interception, 1 scoop and score, and just the whole dynamic changes. 1 4th down stop, 1 Mike Allstott up the gut run on 3rd and 1 to seal a game. I mean, there's just so much emotion and momentum in the game of football. And that was a big drop. That was a drop that you're not going to get many chances against Jared Goff. He's not going to throw the ball up for grabs. And when he does, man, you got to come down with it. And that's one that's stung for the Bucs.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, obviously, football is a team game, but it almost feels as if what needs to be done kind of like flip flops from the regular season. Yeah, Cali Buck says, just ask the Falcons. How,
Momentum is
like,
everything.
the regular season, I think it's a lot more about, scoring points, putting up numbers, big production in that aspect. But then when the playoffs come around, it
Yeah.
almost feels as if like who can make the big defensive play
Yeah.
ends up kind of like winning the game. And you can look at, the Bucs against the Eagles. It was maybe not one particular play, maybe actually stopping the tush push,
Yeah.
or the brotherly shove, but just the fact that the Bucs defense dominated that game and refused to let the Eagles do anything. And then that, second playoff game, it was Jamel Dean not intercepting the ball in the end zone early in the game.
Yeah.
And then the interception that Detroit came up with late in the game that really, pretty much sealed it. So, yeah, I mean, you need your best players to step up in those type of moments, especially. I know we just said it, but that really was. It was a can of corn. It was a can of corn to Jamel Dean. But yeah, shout out to the Bucs for stopping the tush push because, that was an all time moment. The
That
whole
was,
team in
man.
there: Vita Vea, KJ Britt, Anthony Nelson
That
getting in
was.
there, Winfield as well.
And you
Let's
know
also
what?
remember Zion McCollum played safety in that game.
Yeah. Yeah. There's Logan Hall at the bottom there. Logan Hall actually started the
Yeah.
whole thing. I remember asking him about it. And I said, what do you remember about the play, the stopping the tush push? He's like, I just wanted the massive humanity off me. I couldn't breathe. I mean, you see poor Logan Hall. He's literally,
poor guy.
he's underneath the Buccaneers defensive line and the Eagles offensive line. He's submarine there. You see Vita Vea on the goal line. KJ Britt pulling Jalen Hurts back from the potential go ahead, or I should say the 2-point conversion there. That was one heck of a moment. And let's not forget, this was Jason Kelsey's last game, right? Eagles legend, Jason Kelsey. So not only did Rondé Barber shut down the vet back in 2002 with this infamous pick six, taking the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl, but the Buccaneers also ended Jason Kelsey's career with a big fat loss in the playoff game last year. Kind of like what Mike Edwards and the Bucs defense did to Drew Brees in his final game in New Orleans in 2020. So it's nice when the Buccaneers defense especially puts the nail in the coffin for some of these arch enemies of the Buccaneers.
Yeah, they've done it time and time again. Maybe they can. I'm trying to think like who they could do to against this year, but I don't know if anyone's kind of close to their retirement tour. Maybe they could do it to Kirk Cousins. Who knows? Well, actually, he just signed a huge deal. But yeah, you never know.
Troopa City says, when is the cruise again? Well, I'm glad that you asked because this is your opportunity to make sure you get your spot on the Tampa Bay Bucs cruise.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr!
Arr!
Make sure you're signed up for the Tampa Bay Bucs cruise. The official Buccaneer cruise is March 7th through 10th next year. Make sure that you go to TampaBayBucsCruise.com for more information or to sign up. You can also call 1-800-975-7112. Some of the guests that have already committed to the cruise this year from the current Tampa Bay Buccaneers: Yaya Diaby, Kalijah Kancey, Jordan Whitehead, Trey Palmer, and Luke Gedeke back on the cruise as well this year, as well as some Bucs legends. Mr. Derek Brooks will be at the Key West stop, as well as cruise members Mike Allstott, the A-Train, and Brad Johnson, Super Bowl MVP. I should say Super Bowl participant, Super Bowl champion. Dexter Jackson was the Super Bowl MVP, and he'll be on the cruise as well. So lots of great Bucs legends and current Buccaneers to meet and greet with, and that is on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise. Again, check out TampaBayBucsCruise.com.
Yeah, looking forward to it for sure. Someone had a great comment. Andrew said, I remember when fans were pissed that with the Vita pick over Derwin James. It is funny, like I it is funny just looking back at like people having such strong opinions one way or the other,
Yeah.
and like one clearly worked out better. I wouldn't even like get mad at people that were team Derwin James because he was obviously a very
Yeah.
interesting prospect, and none of us have a crystal ball, at least that I'm aware of, it could
Right.
predict the future. But yeah, that's one the Bucs definitely got right, and maybe it was just Derwin James going to San Diego that then turned into LA because
Yeah.
it seems like everyone on the Chargers just gets like super injured like whenever they play there. And the Bucs do play against the Chargers this season, so
Yeah.
hopefully everyone's there.
Thing about Vita Vea is the size speed combination for a player that big to move the way he does, to be as impactful. And remember, the Buccaneers drafted him when they were a 4-3 team. And I'm not saying he couldn't have been a good 4-3 nose tackle, but he's actually an ideal 3-4 nose tackle on this team. And of course, he plays on the 4-man defensive line in the Bucs nickel pass rush situations because he does things like this. He shoves centers and guards into the backfield and creates havoc. So it's rare to get a player like Vita Vea. And I'm not saying safeties are a dime a dozen, but you can find more Derwin Jameses out there, I think, than you can Vita Veas. They're just kind of rare breeds, and Vita Vea is a special player, and I think the Buccaneers made the right choice at the very end. Helped them win a Super Bowl, made a Pro Bowl appearance, and I think he's got a chance to make the Pro Bowl this year as well, Matt.
Yeah, I think so. We actually wrote about this on a recent Pewter Report roundtable of how many Buccaneers are going to make the Pro Bowl this season, and without giving everyone away, I'm sure there's a couple you can figure out. I think one of the best things Vita Vea has going for him are a couple of things, but one, Aaron Donald's retired, and
That's right.
Aaron Donald plays in the NFC, and obviously he's one of the greatest defensive tackles to ever play the game of football, so he naturally kind of gets one of those spots. And I think with Vita, losing a lot of weight, I think that will help him out this season with just being available for each game and kind of what he can do. And having Kalijah Cansey for more games, I think will be very helpful. And also, shout out to Brian Baldinger of the NFL Network because he's always posting videos of really great moments by the Buccaneers, but specifically like Vita Vea, Yaya, and Kalijah Cansey. He's done a lot with Graham Barton too. So, Brian Baldinger is kind of big on the Vita Vea hype train. He has been for several years.
He has,
that will continue. And with the Bucs, hopefully winning double-digit games this year, can help a long way. I think the tides are starting to turn with a lot of these Bucs players that haven't always gotten the attention that they've deserved to get. I think the tides are turning a little bit.
I think you're exactly right. Folks, the tides are turning. We're almost done with today's show. It is fast approaching 5 o'clock here on the Eastern Seaboard. And you know what that means? It means it's dinner time. And so one of the places that we want you to go for dinner or to watch college or pro football is Walk-Ons.
Yeah, so what happened out there tonight?
We struck out at home with leftovers, then we remembered Walk-Ons.
What effect did the situation have?
Spirit soared. Nick took on a burger. Jen obliterated her ribeye po' boy. And speaking of spirits, Laura even scored a real tasty cocktail. She needed that.
Any lessons learned today?
Yeah. Head straight to Walk-Ons.
Scratch-made dishes, wall-to-wall TVs, craft beers, and cocktails. Walk-Ons for the win.
That's right. Walk-Ons happy hour is happening right now, and it happens every Wednesday and Thursday from 3 to 6, as well as from 9 to close. So you have 2 happy hour periods of time that you can get some fantastic food and drinks at fantastic prices. $3 happy hour pours, $3.99 domestic pints, $4 house wines, $5.49 22-ounce domestic drafts, $6 fried pickles and small waffle cheese fries, $7 boom boom shrimp and queso dip, and $8 boneless wings and cheeseburger sliders. Those are my favorites. I love the cheeseburger sliders. Make sure that you get to Walk-Ons too for your fantasy football draft. You can either dine in and do your draft at Walk-Ons or let Walk-Ons cater your fantasy football draft at home. 3 locations in the Tampa Bay area: Lutz by the Outlet Malls by Wesley Chapel, Midtown Tampa and also Lakeland. Walk-ons. Fantastic food, fantastic prices.
Oh, yeah. Shout out walk-ons. Looking forward to heading to one of their happy hours very, very soon, because it's always
Tuesday's the day
always
to
a
go,
great
Matt.
time.
They
Yeah.
have happy hour all day long on Tuesdays, plus $5
Yeah.
Tito's. You can't beat that.
Plus, there's no player availability that day.
Yes, well said. Well said.
There's a little more time. But it's been a great time with you, the Pewter people, again on today's show. We have another one coming up tomorrow at 4 p.m. We will be talking about the Bucs getting healthier for week 1 when they go up against the Washington Commanders. We'll talk about Jordan Whitehead, a little more about Yaya Diaby and some of the other players that have been in and out of the lineup with injury as the Bucs get closer to the regular season. So that'll be a big topic for tomorrow. By the way, shout out to all of our Pewter Platinum members. We appreciate all of you.
Yeah, we just picked up Scotty J as a new Pewter Platinum member.
Heyo.
That's the highest level of membership we offer. So we appreciate Guru, Scott Federico, Parformance 2, and Scotty J. You guys get the shout out every show. And we also want to thank Scotty J, one of our newest members, as we mentioned, Kevin McDowell, for becoming recent Pewter Report TV channel members, in addition to today's new member, Callie Bucs. So greatly appreciate all of your support for the Pewter Report TV channel here.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. If you want to become a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, just hit the join button on our YouTube page, and that will set you up that way. There are several different memberships you can look at. There's Pewter People member, Pewter Pro, Pewter Premier, and Pewter Platinum member. Each one gives you a couple of added bonuses to that member or level of membership. So, please do what you feel is best.
A Friday Insider, a Pewter Insider show just for our Pewter Premier and Platinum members. So we do a special podcast for members only. It's going to have a lot of scoop that we haven't really talked about during the week or reported on leading up to the game. And we'll be doing that Friday at 11 o'clock as well. This week, we'll have maybe a different time for the regular season. We have to figure out when the Bucs practice schedule is going to be, but those will be on Fridays. So either before or after practice. But this Friday's show will be at 11 o'clock here on Pewter Report TV for our Pewter Premier and Pewter Platinum members.
Yeah, and please feel free to join us live. And if you can't, you can write in a question as well on our membership board, and we will address the question on the show. So in the meantime, if you want to follow us all year round, and especially right now during football season, whether you're a member or not, you can follow us over on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment. We got the podcast. We got several videos and content over on our YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe. Like I said, comment below. We will reply back as well and do all that fun stuff. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.